Wow, this is just fabulous to see everybody here this evening. And that was the first time I think I've ever had to use the gavel. So I hope it continues. So I would like to welcome everyone to the April 25th, 2016 regular meeting of the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to call the meeting to order and request a roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff?
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski? Here. Mr. Darrow?
Here.
Vice President McClellan?
Here. President
Kohler?
I'm here as well. Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have just a little bit of business that we need to take care of before we get into the fun part of the evening, the recognitions, and we have a special treat from our resident thespians. So before we do that, could I please have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of March 7th, 2016? It was a special meeting. March 14th, the board meeting work session, and March 28th, which was the regular board meeting in March.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Thank you very much. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? No. We've all had the opportunity to review these in advance, so hearing no need to change anything, could we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, and that motion passes. Our next task is to approve our agenda for this evening, and first I'll ask if there are any additions or changes to the agenda.
Yes, President Kohler, I'd like to ask that we add discussion of the creation of a board committee for health insurance.
Mr. Darrow, do you anticipate this will be a discussion item or an action item?
I'd like it to be an action item
An action item, okay.
after discussion, of course.
All right. Are there any objections to that? Okay. Hearing none, could we please take a roll call for the agenda as amended?
We need a motion and second first.
Oh,
So moved.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Getting ahead of myself. All right.
Where are we going to do? Where are you going to place this on?
Let's see.
You can place it
Let's-
under discussion, and then at that point, if someone wants to make a motion and second to take some action, they can do it at that time.
Okay, that sounds good. Then we'll make it discussion item C under section 6 on the agenda this evening. Thanks for the help and the clarification. And now, can we take a vote, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries. And that brings us to communication to the board and Superintendent Dominique.
Thank you, President Kohler and Vice President McClellan and board members this evening. This is truly the most wonderful part of our meeting each month, and that is the chance to recognize the extraordinary accomplishments of our students and our staff. And tonight we're going to recognize both the arts and athletic competition and high levels of achievement. So before I introduce Mr. Limberg, our director, to come and bring an excerpt from Macbeth, I just want to encourage those that are tuning in via camera. There is still an opportunity for you to see the show this week. There will be performances Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I'm going to invite the board to step away from the table and stand near the audience side so that you can see the performance. Or stay there? Okay.
We are used to performing very
Okay, very good, very good. Mr. Lundberg, take it away.
Hello, good evening. I'm Ellie Lundberg, I'm the Prom director, and I brought two of our performers from Macbeth, the Scottish tragedy, to perform a scene for you this evening. This scene appears in the second act of the play, and it occurs after Macbeth has just murdered King Duncan, and he is returning with his hands covered in blood to his wife to let her know that the deed has been done. This play is quite intense. It's quite the experience. We're performing in Rashad. The stage is a thrust configuration, so the audience sits on three sides. So they will be performing in the center area here to each side of you, which doesn't change our staging at all. Then I'll talk a little bit more about the show after they perform.
Great.
Austin.
Hello.
Yep, and it's. When you mention.
My husband, I have done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise?
I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry, now you speak.
When?
Now.
As I descended? Hark! Who lies in the second chamber?
Donovan,
This is a sorry sight.
a foolish thought to say a sorry sight.
There's one did laugh in his sleep, and one cried murder that they owed each other. I stood and heard them. But they said their prayers again and addressed them to sleep.
There are two lodged together.
There's one did say, God bless us, and amen the other, as they had seen me with these hands, listening their fear. I could not say amen when he did say, God bless us.
Consider it not so deep.
But wherefore could I not say amen? I had most need of blessing, and the words amen stuck in my throat.
These deeds must not be thought after these ways, for it will make us mad.
Methought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more, for Macbeth doth murder sleep. The innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the raveled sleep of care, the death of each day's life, balm of her minds, sore labor's bath, chief nourisher in life's feast, great nature's second course.
What do you mean?
Still, the voice cried, sleep no more to all the house, for Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more.
Who was it that thus cried? Why, worthy thing, you do unbend your noble strength in so great sickly of things. Go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your head. Why did you bring the daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them and smear the sleeping groom with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think on what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not.
Purpose. Sleeping in the dead are but his pictures. To see how I that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll feel the faces of the grooms with fallen, for it must seem their guilt.
Whence is that knocking? How is it with me that every noise appalls me? What hands are these? Ah, they pluck out mine eyes. Will all of Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand? No. Rather, my hands the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red.
My hands are of your color, but I am ashamed to wear a heart so white. I hear knocking of sound entry. Retire each to our chamber. A little water clears us of this deed. How easy is it then? Your constancy hath left you unattended. Hark, more knocking. Get out of your nightgown, this occasion call on us and show us to be watchers. Be not lost so poorly in your thoughts.
To know my deed, 'twere best not to know myself. Wake Duncan with that docking, and would thou couldst. Thank you.
And what you're missing from the scene are the three witches during these class that are spinning around the stage to try to create Macbeth's mind fracturing. At least that's what I was trying to represent. But it makes for a pretty cool effect, and the lights cast off of them, so it's very, very neat. But these students and 28 other actors have been working on the show since February 22nd, 5 to 6 days a week. And we have been really going nonstop now for weeks at this point. We had tech and then the performances this past weekend. And we're performing every day this week for classes from high school, which is really, really neat. But my concept of the show is to bring in some elements of kabuki theater and also the film work of David Lynch to create a nightmarish world on stage. And that's influenced the costumes, the set design, the sound, and created a really unique experience, a unique way of telling the story. And the students are phenomenal. They've risen to the challenge and have really embraced the text, which is incredibly difficult. This is not an easy play to produce, and also the experience and creating the experience for you. So we hope that this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that you might come out and see the show. And we still have tickets available online. So thank you again for having us here this evening, and we look forward to seeing you in the theater.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Mr. Lemberg and his entire crew. They do an exceptional job, and you won't want to miss this performance. It's extraordinary. Our next group of honorees are state level award winners, achievers in math. And so Mrs. Nicholson is going to come and tell us about their achievement. Would you mind going to the podium, and you can leave them there. That way we can see you.
Hello, I'm Jenny Nicholson. I'm one of the coaches for our math counts team. This March 12th, we had 4 students from New Albany Middle School compete at the state math counts competition. And here are 3 of our competitors. We have Aditya Kula, 7th grade. Colin Wang is an 8th grader, and Eric G is also an 8th grader. Ishan Shansakar is the 8th grader who could not be here tonight. But I was very proud of them. They came in 4th in the state at the competition. And Aditya Kula came in 5th in the competition as an individual. The top 16 students in the competition, they compete in something called a countdown round, where they're up in front of all the students, the parents, the coaches, and they compete bracket style, have 45 seconds to answer questions 2 at a time. And Aditya came in 1st in our countdown round.
Wow.
So we were very proud of them.
Thank you.
That's incredible.
We have certificates.
Great, thank you.
So you can see this high level of math competitive achievement continues into high school, and the Moody's Mega Math Challenge. And Mr. McNichols and Mr. Rainsberg lead this team and are going to share with us about their achievement this evening.
Good evening. This is our 4th year that we've participated in the Moody's Mega Math Challenge, and we again had 2 teams like last year. Only a few of the members of teams can make it tonight due to other activities they're involved in. I personally hope they're planning for next year's math challenge. Monthly discussions online if you want to do it. We have some of the people participated. We have Shankar, we have Inzi, Rana, Charles Zhang, Bhargava, Anitra, Taylor, Griffith, Madar, Nikhil, and AJ Moreland. We had 2 full teams. It's only for juniors and seniors on it. Both teams made it through. There's really 2 rounds you have to make it through, and then in the 3rd round, it is the top 6 teams actually get to present at the national level in New York City. They actually presented, I believe, today or last week on the 25th is when they're supposed to be doing it. And it's up online for people to look at. The problem is a 14-hour math problem. And it's not a math problem you would think of solving for X. It's a math problem that deals with just application of math. And the one that they got is share and share alike, and it deals with the car sharing program. So Uber and all those, the beginning of it and going on, they would download the program. It gives them a little bit of references, and they have to write a paper on it to analyze a profit, to analyze just the amount of mileage that's going in, and going through everything along, like what's the better route, coming up with their own formula to deal with and all this. And so a lot of input on their end. Mr. Nichols and I we've gathered them the first maybe 4 or 5 weeks before. During the office hours, they would sit, they'd give them things to discuss, and they would talk through their strategies. It's really on them, their dedication, their effort on what they've done over some of them the past couple of years on this. And we hope to keep on going and making it through. And hopefully one year we'll have someone go, a couple teams, hopefully both, go to New York City and represent New Albany there.
It's wonderful.
And now moving on to our highly decorated Science Olympiad teams that have worked so hard over the years, every year, raising the bar with higher levels of achievement than the year before, and this year is no exception. So it's my pleasure to start with the high school Science Olympiad team and introduce their coach, Sudha Ganesan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Typical Science Olympiad season starts pretty slow. Our students debate the merits and myths of the 23 distinct events that they participate in. They're all in the fields of science, technology, and engineering. There is no set curriculum, no specific level of knowledge that the students are expected to acquire. They're mainly expected to study, research, design, evaluate, experiment, build, break, and create continuously over a 7-month period. Our students this year have had a phenomenal year. Despite a late start to the season and consequently a shorter time frame to get ready, they have always come home winners. The first trip we took, when we got on the bus, my only request to them was not to come in dead last. Not to set fire to any other school, not to break doors, and not to be disqualified. But they have not failed me even once. Every time they try to get better, they want to improve, they want to come home with more. They are greedy, like me. For the first time in New Albany history, our varsity team came home with the 6th place trophy at the state level tournament. And this is huge considering our best performance till date has been the 10th place we earned 2 years ago. And the 5 teams that were ahead of us at states are all repeat national champions, no less. Although we were able to participate in only 3 invitational tournaments, our students have won 69 medals and ribbons during the season, including a super rich haul of 29 medals and ribbons at regionals and 6 at states. Another high point of this year was the Grandview Heights Regionals competition. In a hat-trick performance, the varsity team placed first for the 3rd year in a row with a record total of 67 points against the 2nd place team, which had 159 points.
Wow.
This amazing success is entirely the hard work of all and the consistent efforts of all our teachers and our students. Their unwavering desire to improve after each competition and unflinching focus on getting it right every time have helped them succeed at every competition.
The high school science Olympiad teams are grateful for the constant mentoring and continuous support of the entire high school science faculty and all our parents who have spent countless hours coaching, helping, chauffeuring our students, traveling with us at 4 a.m. to faraway tournaments, helping us run many events at competitions, including at our own New Albany Invitational. We also want to thank the administration for helping us dot the I's and cross the T's and help us with all the operations and logistics. We would have been lost without it. We would not have left New Albany for any competition without it. Many of our students have already set their goals for next year, and all they ask for is the continued support and opportunity to prove that New Albany Science Olympiad programs are just as great as the ones that send teams to the national championships. I'm really proud of my children.
Suda? I'm going to ask you a question. May I ask a question of your Olympians? Could I ask everybody who participated in Science Olympiad in middle school to raise your hand? And how many of you started in elementary school? So it's all the middle school farm team, huh? And some new recruits, and congratulations, because this program spans such a nice wide age group of children. And I'd just like to congratulate you personally, because I know this is your heart and your soul and your dream, and the students and the teachers and the district is lucky to have you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Our next group, the Middle School Science Olympiad, has so much hardware jingling back there that you know it's hard to hear.
I've told them to hold it the entire time. I said, you're allowed to let it jingle when we walk.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Daster. I'm the head coach for New Albany Science Olympiad Middle School. I have Coach Omri Baki here, and I also have Coach Karen Ho, who could make it tonight. First, I just want to thank Suda and her amazing group and the administration. We had our fourth invitational this year in February. We hosted over 80 schools. We're one of the largest STEM competitions in Central Ohio. We had at least 4 or 5 states entering. Last year, because of the snowstorm, we had to turn North Carolina around, so they didn't want to tempt us again this year. So I want to thank everyone for that. This season has been our best season ever in the 21 years that I've coached the program. We have really soared to new heights. We dominated our region, getting 4th place in our state amongst 400 teams out of the entire state of Ohio. This is our first time hitting 4th. The other 3, just like Suda had mentioned above us, are national contenders. In fact, Solon is visiting with President Obama right now for a win at nationals last year. So Ohio is very rich. So this is our first time getting our 4th place trophy, which is real. It's not plastic. The kids and I were impressed. We got medal. To get there, obviously, our students, parents, and coaches have invested tens of thousands of hours. We're one of the few sports to go, like she said, from September to April. We cross all 3 sport disciplines. There's kids are in and out of all their sports, but we just plug along the entire year. We also couldn't do it without your district support and your fan time that we get to show off today. So one more time, thank you so much. And this is my amazing 4th place team for the state of Ohio.
Sodium. Na is the chemical symbol for sodium.
Oh my gosh.
That works well for Science Olympiad.
It does.
Yeah.
They're a little salty bunch.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of our coaches and our teacher leaders and to our parents. who make these programs possible and support our students to do so much extraordinary work. So that was wonderful to be able to celebrate that with all of you. We're going to move into presentations and reports. And for my report this evening, I've asked Mr. Carter to come and share what we have learned as a result of some of the behavior at Prom and some of his plans moving forward for some behavior improvement and some opportunities for learning about appropriate behavior.
Good evening. I just wanted to give you a very brief update about Prom. As you know, Prom was on Friday, April 15th. And unfortunately, we had a few students who were in the possession of alcohol or showed up under the influence. Obviously, this is a violation of our student code of conduct. So the administration, myself, Mr. Geller, Mr. Greenhill, all conducted an investigation and warranted discipline as necessary. But I also want to stress that while a few students chose to do this, hundreds more had a great time. In fact, looking at last year's prom and this year's prom, we had more students staying until 11 o'clock than we did I remember last year. In fact, they formed a big circle. Kids were in a circle dancing around. They were just having a grand old time, and literally to the last song ended. And hundreds of students thanked their chaperones, thanked the administration, and then also sent thank you notes to our chaperones as well, and our organizer, Miss Langendorfer, just thanking them for a wonderful time, and we're pleased at the overall experience. It didn't start off well, but it ended in a positive note. Again, this is disappointing and unfortunate, but like I said, I think we handled it the best way we could. And students are reminded of their behavior throughout the school year. Also, we have a prom promise assembly, and we also it's stated in our handbook what's allowed, what's not allowed, and we through the daily words of wisdom, we still encourage students to act appropriately and then also accept consequences or benefits of positive or negative behavior. Just an unfortunate experience, but like I said, the majority of our kids had a great time. And according to some of our students who are seniors who went last year, is the best prom they've experienced. So in terms of updates, had a number of staff and parents emails supporting what we were doing and thanking us for taking action and addressing the violations. So next steps, I'm in the process of shoring up short-term and long-term. And I also want to emphasize that one event shouldn't cause us to do a broad stroke and punish everybody. That's not my philosophy in terms of discipline. That's not my philosophy in terms of leadership. We'll address it and then we'll move on. But we do need to consider some things. So some of the things we're considering, moving the prom to Saturday, not necessarily related to this event, but the first event in terms of the outrage that came from explaining in full detail what we normally have done in the past 10 or 12 years regarding early release, early dismissal on prom day on Friday. So to eliminate that, we're considering moving prom to Saturday. We're researching what locations are available on Saturdays. What is the cost difference from Friday to Saturday? And does it fit in with our current schedule in terms of the other events that we have in place? So it's not as easy as saying just move it to Saturday. There are many variables that go into that decision and many constraints. Part of that is a lot of weddings and other proms occur on Saturdays at larger venues, and there's a limited number of venues that are appropriate for high school age students on the Saturday. So while we're considering it, it's not necessarily a guarantee, but like I said, we are considering that. We're also considering, again, these are considerations, not rules or policies or procedures, just considerations. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. We're considering using breathalyzers in addition to our current screening. And our current screening is just simply watching the kids walk in, ask questions, shake hands, take pictures with them and everything, just enjoying the festivities. We are going to require, as we always do, attendance at the prom promise assembly or whatever event that we have. Last year, we had a mock crash put on by the theater program. As you can tell, they're very talented. And then students were dismissed after that. And then we'll gather a group of students and staff members to just talk about what are the underlying factors that led to this behavior, and is it something that we have to uncover, and is it a bigger issue than just this one incident? And then, as always, whenever we have events like this, we review handbook, policies, and procedures, and then make sure we shore up any language that's necessary to clear up expectations and make sure everybody's on the same page. So in terms of the student committee or student group I want to get together, I'll tap into our house leaders. And in terms of the staff, we'll get some representatives from our house deans, some head coaches, because they have very influential with students, members of our senior team, a couple of department chairs, and a few other teachers sprinkled here and there, just to have a broad representation of staff. And again, just look at, is it a bigger issue? And if so, how do we address it so that we're more proactive and not reactive? Unfortunately, we had to be reactive, and sometimes when you're reactive, it doesn't come off as well as you like. But I think under the situation and circumstances, I think we did what we needed to do, and we're moving forward as a school community. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Have you thought about ways to make parents partners in maybe, I understand they already are partners, but stronger partners in terms of making sure that families also support the expectations for the students at prom? I don't know if.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation this past week about partnering together to have clear and consistent expectations when it comes to prom, pre-prom. Have a couple suggestions from parents and some ideas. So I think we can move forward. We can also partner with our PTO, since that is a parent-teacher organization. And one of the purposes is to partner to do what's best for kids. So yeah, we'll have those conversations as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, I know you can't speak to specific individuals, but can you discuss the range of consequence for these individuals involved? If not, that's fine.
No, I can't. I'm sorry. Just due to student privacy. Sorry. Other questions?
Well, as always, if board members have further conversation or questions that you would like to ask, please don't hesitate to let me know. And I can keep you posted on Mr. Carter's work. And I know that he'll be happy to answer any questions that may come up at a later date that you didn't have today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I have asked Mrs. Gonda, our interim assistant or interim principal at the middle school, to come and talk about the middle school schedule. Just as an opener to this topic, the board asked, after we were discussing middle school scheduling at the last meeting at your work session, that we asked Mrs. Gonda to come and talk about the schedule as the schedule evolves. Again, not to steal her thunder, but just to give a context, to set the stage. You'll remember that with the reductions of 15 staff at the middle school the year before, there was a significant overhaul of the schedule last year. And a lot of feedback was received from parents and students and teachers about this new schedule this year. And that led to almost an immediate effort to start designing ideas about how to address those complaints and concerns, to be blunt. So she's going to take us through what that draft of the schedule for next year looks like.
Good evening. First, before I get started with the official presentation, I'd like to take a minute to offer both an apology and an assurance. I think the communication that has gone forth from my office over the last several months has been confusing and cumbersome at best in light of the schedule. And that certainly was never, ever my intent. My intent is to partner, to give choice, to personalize each and every student's experience at the middle school. As Dr. Dominy referenced, we did have a schedule that needed to have significant work done to it, and we saw that immediately. And some of that conversation, those communications that came from me resulted from the evolution of our schedule work. And I'd like to walk you through some of that this evening. But again, I do want to express publicly and to you an apology for that communication. I saw flaws in it after it went out. Feedback was received and we've made tweaks, and we hope that our final communication will go out regarding elective choices to our fifth grade families, at the conclusion of this meeting, because I want to make sure that there aren't any additional questions that we need to address in that communication. So
Was it only fifth grade families that had issues?
the fifth grade piece was the largest. If we feel like there's additional communication that needs to address seventh and eighth grade choices or anything else involving that, I'm happy to do that. I certainly want to get to the end as quickly as possible so that we can assure families that they have a full schedule that will open this school year with success. And I want to get to that feeling of peace quickly. But if we need to do more work in communicating, we absolutely will. So let's take a look at where we're going, maybe. Patrick, you said? Yeah, there you go. That does not bode well. Let's see if I can do it. There we go. So first I want to start with the big picture. As I mentioned, we saw right away early in the fall that we had an issue, and we knew that with our schedule based on some immediate feedback, some qualitative feedback, to be honest, lots of parent conversations that we had. I also had students telling me that there were issues, concerns, and constraints in the schedule that they did not like. In fact, several classes took it upon themselves in projects that they had to prove a point or make an argument. They used the topic of the schedule to write to me, and we had some dialogue back and forth. There are 5 areas that we, as a group, since November, brought the teachers together as soon as we possibly could to say, hey, we need to take a close look at this and make some tweaks or throw it out and start all over. But we identified 5 areas that we wanted to focus on based on the feedback that we received. The first, we have to lower class size. We must. We have class sizes that were far too high. We have heard throughout the year that the middle school schedule really needs to align better with the high school schedule, not only to afford access to those students, but also to make that access easier. If there's a schedule change or some sort of tweak on either campus, we are able to do that. We wanted to include more time for enrichment, intervention, and study center that sat separate from our core academic time. We also heard that we aren't seeing our grade level peers enough. Lunch is not enough. So if we are in this SLC model, then how can we make more time to see one another as grade level peers? And that we wanted to see happen through our related arts classes. And finally, and our 6th graders would argue most importantly, we are all going to eat lunch in the middle school, high school cafeteria. That was a goal set as well. So as we walk through this presentation, I'm going to start with just showing you the schedule that we have proposed moving forward. From there, we'll talk about the breakdown of instructional minutes, both for core classes and our related arts picture. And finally, I want to give you some context. We're going to talk about 2 similar and like high-performing schools that have schedules that we can compare to ours. Now, I know this is a lot on this page. We went round and round thinking about how best to show this to you. And I think this makes it most clear. On your left is where we are now. And again, it does offer the instructional minutes, but I'm going to delve into that in just a minute. I want you to look at the whole picture right now. This is the day in the life of a 6th grader. And on the left, you have your current schedule. To your right, those 3 columns are the proposed schedule for next school year, what we like to call a modified block. For those of you who have been around a while, this is a schedule that we were in about the same type of schedule a year prior and for many years prior to that. Again, it's a modified block where students have about 53-minute periods Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then extended periods on Wednesday and Thursday. 7th and 8th grade looks similar. Timing is a little bit different simply because of lunch. We share a lunch space with the high school. They eat their lunch first, we follow. And so the timing of periods have to be a little bit different. But again, this year's schedule in black on the left, the proposed schedule moving forward in the maroon on the right. We can certainly come back to this if there are any questions, but I want to dive into our instructional minutes. Starting with an overview, I want you to see where the minutes are for this year and also moving forward into 2016-17. But the real conversation will come in the next two slides that show us the breakdown of core instructional minutes and related arts minutes. Something that I want you to focus on as you move through each one of these conversations is the asterisk at the bottom of both columns. Currently, you see the number of minutes per week, Monday through Friday, displayed on the left. We noticed right away that there was a need for time to provide intensive targeted interventions, extensions for kids, and a time simply for some students to get work done. Teachers in SLCs have taken it upon themselves that although those instructional minutes, 64 minutes a core block, or core blocks in a day, were supposed to be devoted to quote unquote those instructional minutes, that time of instruction. They have pieced away at that and have created study center or similar and like pieces. So that 1450 and 1650 are not necessarily true reflections of the current instructional minutes that we have. When you move to the proposed schedule, you're looking at between 1607 and 1637, again, based on where things fall in the day. But those instructional minutes do not include what we've been able to place within the context of the schedule, which is a between 20 and 30 minute, depending on the day, academic assist time. That will be a targeted intervention for kids who need extra support, a time for enrichment for kids who need a little bit more or want to dive a little bit more deeply outside of their context of their classroom. And also, again, those times when students need to just get things done or work with partners to get a project underway.
Mrs. Ganda?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go back.
Is that sixth grade number on the left correct?
I believe so. We can certainly double check my math.
I mean, where are the, yeah, because I'd be curious where those 200 minutes are.
Okay, so what you're going to see when we get to the related arts piece is that there is sixth grade community that meets every day. And so that's causing some of that instructional minute to fall. Please check me on the math, but as we get into the core and the related arts, I think it will become clear where we are with minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So am I reading this correctly to say that sixth grade gains instructional time?
Yes. And again, back to that community piece that is in place for sixth grade and not in place for seventh and eighth grade. When you're looking at instructional minutes right now, I am taking core and related arts time and putting them together. So that is the entire time that students are in an instructional environment, whether it is a core course or something like a music or an art. We're going to dive more deeply in the next two slides to see the breakdown of that. I think that will be helpful in the questioning that you have right now.
Just to clarify though, so we're reducing minutes though for seventh and eighth? You said 20 to 30.
We are. I do want you to keep in mind, and I do think it's significant, the figures that you see on the left are the dream that we had for 64-minute core courses. It is not the reality of what's happening right now. Teachers have taken time away from that 64 minutes, and they are allowing it to be study center time, or they are allowing it to be under the umbrella of what we will strategically design in those 130 to 135 minutes a week. Does that make, am I
So
clear?
we're going to have less minutes but higher quality?
Yes, yes. And to be honest, we could have 5 hours for every course, but it is the quality of what we are doing with that instructional time that matters. It's very important.
Thanks.
So again, let me walk through the core instructional minutes and the related arts minutes, and we can certainly circle back. I want you to have the full context of that, along with our high achieving comparisons to give you a full picture of where we are. And again, This is a conversation, this is a partnership, and what I want coming out of this and as we move into the remaining month of school is to create something that's best for our kids and make sure that we are optimizing their experience. So again, to orient you, on the left is where we are right now, and on the right is where we're proposing to go. Yes, you see the drop. Absolutely. But I want to remind you again that that study center piece is not reflected in our numbers now. It's different, and the reason it's not, if I'm sitting in your shoes right now, I'm saying, well, why didn't you just put it in there? It's different for every grade level. It's different for every SLC, and it's different. It's not consistent across the board, which is not acceptable to me on an aside, but it's where we are. And it is taking away from those 1280 per grade level. As we look ahead in having this modified block, the intention is that that enrichment intervention study center time will be, for all intents and purposes, part of that instructional conversation. It is not just a place to go and do your work. It is a place where we've been thoughtful about who you're with, both as instructor and the students that are around you, what you are doing while you're there, and what you need. So if you don't yet know how to respond to the curriculum in front of you, you have an opportunity. If you already know how to respond to the curriculum in front of you, this is another opportunity for you to grow. And if you just, again, need to get some things done, you have that opportunity as well. And that can certainly rotate through. Here's where I want our, the core of our conversation to live. We are significantly, yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, we're significantly increasing those related arts minutes if we go in this model, significantly across the week. But if you look, if you break it down on a day-to-day conversation, you're looking between 12.8 and 17 minutes, depending on the grade level. Again, going back to what I mentioned before, you're looking at the related arts minutes in 6th grade at 480, includes a daily 48-minute community period, which certainly has some things like digital danger and study skills opportunities in it. But for all intents and purposes, it is a study center time. It's a small group study center time. So we are making better use of our time and incorporating that into
Mrs. Gonda,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
So right now, a 6th grader has a 48-minute period daily.
Yep.
That is community period, which could basically be a glorified study center. And then on the whims of whatever class they're in, they could be getting more study center time? Is that what you're saying about the previous slides we were looking at?
No, because, well, yes. The way that you say that, yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to prevent, that we are having some targeted research-based conversations about how to intervene for kids. There is, for 6th graders, way too much glorified study center time, for sure.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, hold on.
you go ahead.
So, without getting too, I'm sure there'll be other people who have questions too. Why is that happening?
It's a great question. I would say that I want to keep the focus of study center on 7th and 8th grade. I don't want to say that it's not happening in the 6th grade world, but it is a conversation that I have had on multiple occasions, exactly what you just said. We shouldn't be doing that extra time. But I will tell you that I am not 100% confident that we don't have teachers who are putting that into place.
Okay, that's fine. I want to know why we are in basically May, the end of the year, and this hasn't been something that's been addressed. I mean, forget about the schedule at this point.
Sure.
Okay, we're talking about instructional time for our kids.
Sure, I agree with you.
And I'm not going to lay the blame just on, frankly, just on the teachers here. I want to know why we're finding out now that kids have 48 minutes a day of study center and then potentially other time during the rest of the day? I mean, what are they learning then? What's going on?
I want to be clear that there are 4 60-minute blocks for kids of instructional time. And on an individual basis, I have conversations with teachers that are appointed that ask the same questions you're asking right now about instruction and what are they learning. I want to be honest that I have seen that multiple times and have had that conversation multiple times. So I have grave concern that it may be happening in other places that I just haven't happened to notice. So I want to be upfront and let you know that I've seen that and we're addressing it, but it's part of this conversation and part of why I want to move to this model that has some structure to it and make sure that we are very much making the most of the time that we have. I don't think we're ready as a staff to move to a longer amount of time. And I also firmly believe that, again, it's not the amount of time, it's the quality of instruction. We have teachers who do an excellent, excellent job. They need professional development in order to take a longer amount of time and fill it appropriately. And I'll tell you what, I don't believe that that longer amount of time is necessary. I think targeted instruction in the amount of time that I'm proposing is the way that we need to go. And again, I hear your concern. Why are we, it's May, we're just finding out about this now. I don't want to have painted a picture of chaos and uncertainty and lack of instruction at the middle school. That is not the case at all. But I also want to come forward and say, just as there is a community piece in the 6th grade arena, there is also time in 7th and 8th grade, and I'm not confident that there's not additional time in pockets in the 6th grade. So we have to take that into consideration as we speak.
So are you recommending we completely go away from the community period?
Yes, yes.
For all grades,
For
6,
all
7,
grades,
8.
that should not be at all the factor. We need a shorter, first of all, shorter amount of time. So a study center moving forward is between 20 and 30 minutes. 48 minutes is too long for any sort of intervention period or study period, in my opinion.
This may be out of scope, but
Sure.
you're replacing it effectively with related arts minutes. I know we've had some challenges on our report cards in middle school. Is there a way to focus that time on core?
That's a great question as well. Part of the reason that we have to do the minutes in the way that we do is that need to align with the high school. And when we do that, it's with the lunches, it causes some inability to balance unless we work numbers in a certain way. That being said, we certainly would want to do what's best for kids in that scenario. And so if we needed to reduce those minutes, we should do that. However, I will tell you that I was gravely concerned when our state data came back to us and we were deeply in the red. That's not acceptable. That's not the educator of 20 years that I am or what I believe in. We have been throughout this school year checking on that very, very rigorously and vigorously through our MAP data. And what I can tell you from that, MAP is a nationally normed benchmark, and our growth of our students is at the highest it could be. We're measuring extreme growth in the to the positive with that metric, a metric that's tried and true. So I do think that we have made some changes instructionally back to that idea of making sure that we target very clearly where we're going. We've made those changes instructionally, and so I feel like we are in a place that we can certainly take a look at related arts numbers like that. I do want to, Phil, do you have a question?
I do. I'm a little confused as to what we're trying to get out of this.
Okay.
You know, what the big picture is. Is this just a presentation, or is there some action that you're expecting? Are you expecting any sort of I don't know. So it's an open-ended question. I don't even know what to ask at this point.
Fair enough.
I'm fairly confused.
Okay, I'm sorry that you're fairly confused. I do hope to gain from this, the questions that you have, the confusion that you feel. My intention is to bring that to an end and answer questions that you have so that we can move forward with a viable middle school schedule that has been properly vetted and is clear to all stakeholders, not just those that work at New Albany Middle School. That's very important. My intention here is not to convince you of something, but rather partner with you and get your opinion and figure out if we need to make tweaks to this. I want you to ask me those big questions to make sure that you and I both think that we're doing the right thing.
Well, my confusion looking over it is really stemming from what appears to be, even with the caveats in with the asterisk items at the bottom of some of these sections, it appears that there's fewer minutes of instructional time,
Correct.
More structure to the study periods in some cases that, if I've heard you correctly, are essentially being carved out by teachers who believe it's necessary for them to carve out some time, so they're carving it out of their core instructional periods. And if there's a mismatch in what the schedule has and what the educators believe is required to get the results, then I'm not the one to make that judgment. I expect the professional educators to have more of a judgment on that, but it still looks like there's just fewer minutes of core instructional time. So it's pretty much across the board with a lot more minutes in art. Art's important. So just not exactly sure where to go with this, but that's what I see so far.
Okay, so.
And if I can just say that that's my concern too, because if you back up one slide and to me, taking nothing away from the importance of related arts, my chief concern is the time spent on the core instructional items. And it looks to me like if you compare sixth grade from current to proposed, that's like 3 hours almost of instructional time a week. And even if you look at your 20 to 30 minute study halls, that's still taking a significant amount of time away from those core subjects. And I understand it's working smarter, not longer, and all of those things. But, as I think about it from the parent's perspective, I guess I'm hoping that you have a stronger justification for taking almost 3 hours a week away from the language arts and math and science and social studies.
So two things that I want to talk about and one I want to show you to help you with that. First and foremost, I think there's a bigger conversation here that certainly needs to be had. And I feel like it was my job to begin to put the structure in place to allow us to have it. But as a board, you are able to entertain the conversation about related arts, about what we believe in as a district. And currently, our board policies reflect an arts background being incorporated. And so that's the piece that we're trying to honor in that. I certainly think that we need a much more robust model at the middle school. And what I mean by that is different choices. Not every kid wants to experience music. There are other districts that have other options in tech or in service, so on and so forth, that I think if we're going to go in a related arts path, we might want to consider. That being said, my goodness, we certainly need to have a community dialogue about that. That's not just making a change on a schedule. That's a conversation that all stakeholders need to be a part of. The other piece that I want you to look at, just for context, again, I want you to understand that I am not here trying to schlep a middle school schedule at you. I want to have a conversation. And so I brought two other school districts, their middle schools and what they do. We're looking first at Upper Arlington, and a couple pieces that I want you to notice there. Instructional minutes, around about the same ballpark. UA believes in putting their global language into their core minutes. So you'll see a breakdown of 220 minutes in reading and global language. That reading piece is in 6th grade, they're able to take 1 semester of exploring all the languages and 1 semester of a reading course. And then they begin the actual selection of 1 course in 7th grade to move forward. 95% of their kids take a global language course in 7th grade, and the other 5% is again in that reading piece. You'll see their related arts minutes as well, and certainly less than ours, but I do want to show that to you.
Where are the related arts minutes?
They're at 442 minutes per week. What's interesting about Arlington and their related arts piece, they don't give any choice. Everything is required, and they take the same rotation all 3 years. So they have 2 periods a day. That first period is an exploratory arts class. They take 1 a quarter. They have an ed tech, a health, an art, and a life skills. And then their second one is an AB rotation, so that, like what we do every other day, you're choosing a music, which orchestra, band, choir, or general music, and then that's opposite a PE class. I also took a look at Dublin. Dublin has 1,000 minutes per week at the core and 500 minutes in related arts instruction. They do not introduce global language until the 8th grade. There isn't a survey, there isn't any sort of over 2 years or anything like we do. They simply don't do it until the 8th grade. Their related arts are also required and on an AB rotation opposite study center for music. So every child takes music. Every child is required by trimester to take a PE, an art, or an academic reading. So I want to summarize for you, and then I want to give you lots of opportunity for additional questions. Ultimately, I'm in it, as you are, for our students, and what our students will benefit in making these changes. And I understand that some of these changes are difficult to swallow, but if we put them back into the conversation, then some of these things will be lost, plain and simple. We're reducing class sizes. We will have access to, we've always had access to classes at the high school, but there will be more access and easier access to those high school courses. Time for additional growth through enrichment, intervention, study center. They get to interact more with their grade level peers. And again, eating lunch, all of them in the high school and middle school cafeteria. So I'm happy to go back to any piece of it and really get into the weeds with it, with questions that you have. Mr. Darrow.
Should I be able to add up core instructional minutes and related arts minutes and arrive at the total of instructional minutes?
You should not, because you have a lunch and you have the study center time. Lunch is 30 minutes. You also have a 3-minute class exchange in between each one of those classes that we offer, which also, on a side note, is, although it's minimal, is not in that the current schedule right now. We go back to back to back to back.
I was trying to get an apples to apples comparison of us with Dublin and Upper Arlington, and I'm not being successful because I can't look at 2 numbers and add them together. In the case of Upper Arlington, if I add all their minutes together, I don't come up with their total instructional minutes either. So I do with Dublin, because 1,000 plus 500 is 1,500. But that's the only one that adds up. So I mean, it would appear from looking at Upper Arlington and Dublin that the minutes that we have scheduled are higher, but I can't make it all add up. So it doesn't. I don't have apples to apples, so I can't really compare.
Okay, so in making sure that I get you what you need, do you feel that there is a math error in what you see, or you're missing information?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know it doesn't add up.
Okay.
So, if Upper Arlington and Dublin are presented here for us to have some comparison, then the comparison has to be apples to apples, or it isn't comparable. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So.
I do think in looking back at the Arlington piece, if you, what I can assure you is accurate, the 880 in the core, the 220 for reading and global language, and the 442 in related arts.
Right, 880 and 220 is 1100 plus 442 is 1542. So,
It's close.
Yeah,
It's close.
it's close, but you know, a minute here, a minute there, pretty soon you're talking about hours. Anyway.
I do think, if I may, I think because of the complexity, and this can be so confusing, and I'm assuming the board has many questions, that the best way to do this is to capture all of those questions, to make sure we get answers to all of those questions.
Absolutely.
Even to Mr. Darrow's last question, I was thinking that some of the missing information may just be length of school day.
Yes, 1.5
You don't,
longer.
we don't know those things by looking at the slide. So I think that if we capture all the questions at this point in time, or these are questions that I could gather, and then we could work to get better answers. And as a summary, what I would like to just do to try to help maybe tease out the board's questions is if you go back to, let's start with this slide right here. So capturing the question around, and this is the area where we need some good, robust feedback from the board, because part of what I don't think has come out tonight very clearly is that we're trying to navigate between conflicting desires and opinions. So in that 1280, what you don't see is that there was a groundswell of parent complaint early in the fall that students needed a study center. And so I don't think that came out very clearly, that teachers, in trying to carve out study centers and different approaches, were trying to address that demand that we heard so frequently from parents. So part of the feedback and guidance that would be helpful from the board would be that navigation of those demands, because if you are going to put a study center back in the schedule, it is going to reduce the appearance of the instructional minutes in the period, which are now being delivered in the period. So I just want, that to me seems like point number one, we need feedback from the board. The second point would be, because again here to Laura's point, the difference between 1280 and 1080 is 200 minutes a week. So if there is 200 minutes a week going on currently of study center, then it's close. If it's not 200 minutes a week of study center, the question is, where are we going to recapture that? Can we redesign, or can you take back to teachers so that we can tweak this, some adjustments to deal with shoring up, deal with the study center concern parents have, shore up the instructional minutes, balance the related arts? Those are some of the different questions that seem to be coming to the forefront that we could work on. Again, to be blunt, you can't have it all. If parents are going to demand study center, it's going to change the nature of the way the periods look. If we take study center off the table and go back to the longer instructional minutes and the longer periods, that's possible too. But this was an attempt to address that. The second major point we need guidance from the board, or input from the board, again, that I don't know if it came out clearly, is some of these trade-offs are being made to align with the high school schedule. So one of the paramount decisions being made here is this is attempting to align at least the first 2 periods of the day. If we're willing to forego that flexibility.
What does that mean?
That means a student, the time at which a high school convenes the class is the same as which the time the middle schooler would be in a similar class. So there's no loss of time in them just walking across to the high school. Whereas if the middle school period was longer, but the high school period was over, by the time you get to second period, that student is either missing instruction at the high school or missing instruction in the middle school, or you're having to create some kind of buffer for those students.
Is that part of attempting to manage the gifted students with accelerated programming so they can attend high school classes while they're in middle school?
Right, exactly.
And,
So that makes sense.
and often in that situation, we have students who are taking Algebra 2 and biology. And so what we're able to do, why we target those first 2 periods, is that we can respectfully ask the high school, have your a section of biology and a section of Algebra 2 at the very front of your day. And when we go to that Wednesday, Thursday modified block situation, it still lines up because they have 1 class on Wednesday and 1 class on Thursday.
I know how much kids love those early morning classes. When
Absolutely.
they're wide awake,
Yes.
ready for advanced
Which-
biology and
Yes.
math.
So that scenario only impacts 8th graders?
Some 7th and even some 6th as we continue to have those accelerated conversations. So it is the bulk, 8th grade that's impacted, but there are 6th and 7th graders who participate as well.
And these are kids that walk to the high school for the class?
Yes.
Is this a significant number of kids doing this?
It is in the ballpark of 30 to 40 this year, more as we move ahead. But, and certainly, I know that we have significantly more students than that. But the amount of time that when it doesn't align, so for example, this year we have a 64-minute first period class that you're in, and classes going on at the high school that are shorter in length, to figure out if we change a schedule, have an event of any kind on either campus, we have major issue in doing that. So it also allows for partnership moving forward in doing things together and having even mentor-mentee type situations if we have an aligned time that we can do that.
And back to the study center. So did 6, 7, and 8 not have study center this year?
They did not unless they created it within their SLC, within their grade level.
And 6th grade is the only grade that had the 48-minute community period daily?
Correct.
And that 48-minute period could be used however the SLC choose to use it?
Yes.
And so you're proposing we add a study center to 6, 7, and 8?
Correct, but for a significantly less amount of time.
Than the community period?
No community period at all.
Okay.
No community period at all. And also having that at a set time during the day, so services can come from all parts, special ed services, gifted services can come from and be targeted toward that period instead of just some willy-nilly time during a class.
And I'm sorry, I'm just struggling to understand all the detail. And so, that study center time that you're adding, so 6th grade, it's kind of being swapped somewhat with the community period?
Say that differently. I want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
I'm just trying to follow where all the time's coming from.
Gotcha.
So we eliminated the community period, so I can find time there.
You can find time there for the sake of the balance of the schedule that becomes related arts time. We can certainly have conversations about reconfiguring that if the priority is different. But because we already had the model in 7th and 8th grade, we look to make the model similar to past years in 6th grade, just by taking that community period away and inserting the related arts.
So, I'm sorry, on the 6th grade schedule, are you proposing the same related arts minutes that have existed in the 7-8 schedule to date, or are 7-8 getting more related arts minutes now too?
If you look at just last year's schedule, this current year.
Yes.
If you just look at this current year, they're going to get more related arts.
All the grades get more?
All the grades get more.
So
I would need to look back at our previous years and look at that schedule, but I would imagine that it is very similar to what I'm proposing.
So I think that's a big, question for parents is, can we do something that is maybe more like a global language instead of piling it all into the related arts?
Certainly, that is a conversation that I invite, that I think is a good one to have. To be honest, I really like what I see in Arlington and how that's broken down, and you have exposure to all. But that is a program conversation that, as I mentioned earlier, takes a lot of time and needs to be vetted over a period of months. I think we need to take one step at a time and have a structure in place that we can agree on, that moving forward in the future, do we make the global language a core? Do we invest more resources into that? Quite possibly we do, but I don't know that we're ready at this juncture to do that as a district.
I'm going to make a suggestion here. It's obvious to me that many of us still do have questions about the middle school schedule. So I'm going to request that you be willing to set up meetings with groups of 2 board members. And I'm also going to make a suggestion that you, once you've had the opportunity to meet with us in small groups so that we can really dig in and ask the questions that we want to ask, if you would be willing to put together a parent meeting before the end of the year to discuss this issue. And then what this discussion has done is it's triggered in my mind questions even about when was the last time that we really gave the related arts program serious consideration? And are there other options that maybe we should be thinking about offering, even beyond global languages? I mean, just in terms of technology or robotics or personal finance or any of those items. So my other suggestion is that we assign the task to review the whole related arts and middle school schedule. I would recommend that we wait until we have identified the principal in the building, and then I would recommend that we put together a committee of parents, administrators, teachers, and maybe a board member or 2. I'm thinking maybe Paul, because you have kids who are approaching this stage and are actively there now, and maybe Debbie would like to be involved. I don't really care who it is from the board, but I do think this whole topic is worthy of further consideration.
I will offer, I think all of that is excellent. I will offer one caution, and one that we can certainly work around, but there are deadlines related to our partnership with Treca, with Meta, who does our schedule, works with Power School to make sure that that's up and running. And so we want to be cognizant of May 15th, not May 15th, June 15th.
Oh, okay.
We need to make sure that we have finalized conversations of how we want to move forward so that they can process our schedule.
Absolutely. My thought would be that we would get all of this done and wrapped up before the end of school.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay.
Does that
Yeah,
make
I would
sense?
just comment, I mean, I know we've kind of given you the third degree here. I appreciate the fact that you've come forward and really try to be transparent, try to lay it out there. I mean, I know the community knows that we've got good schools and we can have better schools, and I think it starts with this kind of dialogue. I don't know that we've had this kind of dialogue in the past, certainly, and I appreciate you coming forward and laying it all out and subjecting it to scrutiny, and we'll figure out through the mechanism that Laura laid out, how do we get better? And I mean, Phil has gone back to our policy and looking for a new superintendent about, achieving the best academic and developmental outcomes. And to me, this is all about looking at our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and say, how do we make the next group coming through even better than the great group that we put through in the last few years? So again, I invite this, and I appreciate that it is complex, and that you've mentioned a couple of restrictions that I'm curious to know what those are at some point about, what are the alignments that restrict us, and you say what would be optimal, really what are the optimal outcomes as opposed to what we're constricted by, and let's figure that out. How do we you've asked the board to look at their policy around related arts and other matters, so I'll get off my soapbox, but I appreciate the all the dialogue.
I appreciate it as well. I think that we only are going to achieve the goals of the board, the excellence that you are expecting by having this kind of conversation. It is not personal, it's about our kids, and we need to make sure that we're making the right decisions for them. So I thank you for that.
Elizabeth, if there's any more detail that you want to send us before you meet with us,
sure,
that might be helpful. Just give us some pre-reading.
You bet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll ask Dr. Dominy to send out some kind of a schedule that we could opt into. So thank you very
You're
much for
welcome.
being here this evening. And
Thank you.
I think it was a very robust and healthy discussion.
Thank you. The last topic I wanted to bring up for the board's discussion and just to make clear for our entire community is that our board has led the way in creating an informational session on the win-win agreement. As the board has spent extensive hours learning and researching the win-win, the board wants to make this available to the community to have the opportunity to review all of that same information. The board has been reviewing for many months, and we want to make sure that you know of that date, May 4th at 6:30, and I know that Laura has some additional information about that.
Yeah, I do. And that is, I want to let our board know about some of the action that I anticipate the Dublin board is going to be taking this evening. I received a call from their board president over the weekend. And I want to share this with you, not to advocate or to take a particular position, but because I believe it's going to attract media coverage, and I think that our board needs to be prepared to answer some questions. According to their board president this evening, they are going to pass a resolution that she was kind enough to send me a copy of before our meeting this evening. And because not everyone has a copy, I'm going to read it to you very briefly. Again, this is what Dublin is doing about win-win. So the resolution is authorizing the support for permanent boundaries for Dublin City Schools. Whereas there have been recent news articles on the fact the territorial annexation agreement, referred to as the win-win agreement, renewal negotiations period is now open. Whereas more than 5,400 students attending Dublin City Schools live in the territorial annexation agreement area of our district, and their parents pay Dublin City Schools property taxes. Whereas our district boundaries largely have not changed in more than 100 years. Yet, every 6 years, Dublin City School residents living in the territorial annexation agreement area must endure discussions regarding school district boundaries. Whereas, as per the terms of the territorial annexation agreement, if one district decides to withdraw from it, this action could void the agreement and have an adverse impact on our Dublin City School District boundaries. Whereas the Board of Education of Dublin City Schools feel it is time to make our Dublin City School boundaries permanent and to remove any anxiety the cyclical renewal of the agreement may cause many of our residents. Therefore, the Dublin City Schools Board of Education authorizes the superintendent and treasurer to engage in discussions with the appropriate Columbus Public School officials and to open discussions regarding the possibility of our Dublin City School boundaries and making them permanent. Additionally, and this is the piece that I want to also share with the board, we authorize the superintendent and treasurer to work with our state-level elected officials in order to explore a legislative option for making our Dublin City Schools boundaries permanent. They will also be deciding in the near future what their position is going to be regarding the agreement and their continued participation in the agreement. They have taken a very strong stance on protecting those students who are currently in their district, even though they are residents of the city of Columbus. And therefore, they have decided to seek a legislative solution to what they see as an ongoing issue that causes many in their community anxiety every 6 years. I have been told by Dublin's board president that they have a champion in both the House and in the Senate. I think it's a good time for us to review what this board has been doing about win-win, and April alluded to this as well. Just as a refresher, each one of the 5 of us has had an opportunity to meet either in pairs or individually with an attorney from Bricker and Eckler who is working on the win-win agreement. And we had a Win-Win 101 seminar, courtesy of this particular attorney. And she reviewed with us the history of the agreement, the facts versus the rumors associated with it, and listed pros and cons of continuing in the district. After we heard that information then, and after I had an opportunity to talk to a couple of other board members about the information, we asked the administration then to schedule and offer a town hall for community residents to come together to hear what we've heard, to ask their questions, and also to share their opinions. As April mentioned, this is going to take place on May the 4th, 6:30 in the McCoy Center for the Performing Arts. It's a very important meeting, and I think that we would all encourage anyone with questions or an interest in this to come and learn what we have learned about this. We do not plan really to discuss the win-win agreement or to take any action, if any action is required, until after we've had the opportunity to have our community meet as a whole. So the other piece of information that I wanted to share with you this evening is that we have requested that the win-win agreement be a topic of our work session that will take place on May the 9th. So just to review, we don't have to do anything to stay in. But if districts who choose to opt out have to take affirmative action to opt out of the agreement by May 31st. So it's a short window here. If you'll allow me just one editorial comment too, really. One of the things that I talked to Dublin's board president about is the fact that we have believed that the win-win agreement has served this district very well. It's allowed us to have a more predictable future, if you will. It's allowed us to know what our boundaries are. And over the years, and Phil mentioned this the last time we talked about it, I think many of us have come to view the win-win agreement as an insurance policy, where we are paying the Columbus City Schools about $480,000 a year, but that $480,000 a year is what's providing security to the school district in terms of our borders. So I think that win-win is going to become kind of a topic of discussion this time around. Most times it renews quietly and there isn't much discussion, but certainly I think that this is a sign, at least from Dublin, that that they are going to put considerable thought into how to protect those citizens who are in the Dublin City School District but reside in the city of Columbus. So I don't know if board members have any other questions. That's about all I know, but I'd be happy to try and entertain any if you have them.
My only comment is just to reiterate that I would love for community members to come to the town hall.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's a complicated issue. It's easy to say it's this thing or it's that thing. It costs us money, it saves us money, it provides protection, it's an insurance plan. It's easy to say any of those things, but really for the community members here and those watching on video, please come and ask your questions yourself. One of the biggest eye openers from the session with council was the misunderstanding. Just assuming that it was what was reported in the papers, and not until you ask questions and really challenge council do you find out for yourself what it actually means. So whatever we think it may be, we really want the community to ask your own question and be informed before we come back and have another public discussion with the board. Informed debate is great. Uninformed debate is really challenging. So please come and ask your questions and find out for yourself.
Just to follow up on what Phil said, I think it's important to remind folks that what may be good for Dublin may not be good for New Albany. And so we're going to have to do what's best for our community as a whole, the entire district community. And so I definitely encourage you to come and spend some time and learn and understand. Also, just from a legislative process standpoint, yes, Dublin may have champions in the House and the Senate, but let's just be honest. This is a very big state, and there are lots of members of the House and lots of members of the Senate who frankly aren't impacted at all by this. And so in order for something like this to be taken up, they're going to have a really good reason to do it. And we have our own representatives and senators who can speak on our behalf. And so I think it's very important, again, that we as a community come together and have this discussion, make a decision for our community, what's best for us, and then if we need to act on that one way or another. But this is a very important topic. As someone who has lived both in the win-win and in the city, and who has lots of friends and family members and in all over the community, this is something that I think means a lot to all of us and to all of our kids. And so please take the time to be informed on this.
I'm just going to reiterate, because this is not a headline issue. This is not where you can read the summary of somebody else's summary and understand it. So it is something that has already been in the headlines. It's been in the dispatch. We're going to hear it about it again from Dublin. But please, community, come get informed. I can tell you during the time I spent with council, in my mind, I was going back and forth several times. And as you ask the additional questions, you do feel like you have a much better handle on what ultimately will be the right answer for the district. But please come and get informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce your new superintendent, Mr. Michael Sawyers. This 100-day plan.
Thank you, Dr. Domini. Good evening, President Kohler, Vice President McClellan, Board of Education members. This evening, I'm going to present a very high-level overview of the 100-day entry plan that I submitted to the Board of Education during the interview process to become the next superintendent within the school district. We've publicly posted the 100-day plan since the announcement for me within the school district of selection. I've received commentary both from staff and from the public at large, so I'm still collecting the information, but do intend to release the final version of the 100-day plan yet this week. And I'd like to go through some of that information with you this evening. The premise and foundation behind everything within the plan focuses on students. Students are first within the plan. You will see a series of 95 different activities that I will march you through in a very high level within 5 specific pillars that talk about the reality of how we put students first within the school district to basically look at how we're going to achieve that. I'm not going to go through all the verbiage, but this will get posted to the website specifically for summary purposes. I did put in the goals and the outcomes of the plan in case the community does not read the entirety of the 26 pages that I've outlined within the 5 specific areas that I will talk about this evening. I want the very high level of the goals to be understood. So At a very high level, the first is to transition leadership, still focused on continuous improvement for student achievement. The second is to establish qualitative and quantitative relationships within the school community, including that with the Board of Education. The third is to listen broadly and deeply to understand the varying voices that do exist within our school community at large. I think the Board of Education has heard firsthand that there is a wide variety of voices out there that represent what our stakeholders truly believe is best for our students. The fourth focuses really on the premise behind the statement of purpose for the Board of Education, and that's the majority of what I'm going to talk about this evening as I weave through the plan, and ultimately to create the culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student in our school district. And lastly, for goal purposes, is to use our resources wisely, both human and financial capital, to demonstrate responsibility. And really from a financial standpoint, when you get to the last section of my plan, it's really to either spend within plan, ultimately to demonstrate effective use of our resources, or better. So we will live within our budget for the next 5 years and ultimately do better to the best of our ability. The next focus is outcomes. So inputs, and there's all kinds of inputs that happen across the entire school community on a daily basis, but our reality is we're responsible publicly for the outcomes that need to exist within the school district. So there are 4 overarching outcomes that are the overarching goals or outcomes within my plan. The first is to establish and communicate with clarity the direction, focus, and principles of our school district, both under my leadership and through board guidance, because you are the governance of the school district. So we need clarity. The second is presentation of a comprehensive summary of the key findings, observations, and current state of our schools. And I think that we have a great start on collecting that information, and you will see why in a second when I give you the specific example of the data that I've already been reviewing. The third is to establish short and long-term improvement plans for the school district that really have qualifiable detail that can be measured for accountability purposes. And the fourth is establish how the Board of Education and I are going to engage in systemic reform. How will we operate and function together as a team to lead and govern the school district at large? My plan basically has 5 pillars. So it's the easiest way to represent it is to actually show you the graphic of the pillar. Front and center, and I told you basically it's threaded throughout the entire plan, but it's basically what I'm going to continuously talk about within the school district, and it's to create the culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. I've done that within 5 organizational structures that qualify the 95 different activities that I've created, both for immediate, so it's within the first 30 days. So since last Wednesday, I'm on day number 9. And you're going to see the summary of what I've achieved so far. Our pre-entry plan for what happens basically in the month of May, June, and July. The official entry for transition purposes effective August 1st through December. And the last section basically deals with long-term, because there are some things I've identified that are just not physically possible to do between now and December that have a long-term impact systemically as part of the reform process. The 5 pillars are governance, organizational capacity and alignment, student achievement, engagement, communications, and operations and finance. Again, going back to the purpose of the school district, we're here for students. I'm going to deep dive, very high level, so it's really not deep, I apologize, into governance. I'm going to focus most of my commentary this evening on organizational capacity and alignment because of specific things that I said I was going to do within the first 30 days. So first, within governance. And the focus is really, to a large degree, on both you, on me, the CFO, because I have to establish a relationship with that woman over there named Mrs. Jenkins, and ultimately the community and our students. So we have to ultimately learn how to work together. You saw in my plan that I talk about the fact that there's a board retreat that's necessary to make sure that we get on the same page. So Mrs. Kohler and I have been conversing about how that's going to happen with the entirety of the board. We have to agree upon our outcomes. We all have to be accountable, and we have to report transparently. If we expect to create the culture of accountability within the school district, it starts with us. So we have to demonstrate that we're capable of doing it in order to hold others to the same standard. Second pillar is organizational capacity and alignment. And this is actually where I'm going to spend a little bit of time this evening again, because the activities I specifically talked about within the first 30 days. So number one is to expand my knowledge beyond my present scope. So for the last 8 days, you're going to see I've spent an inordinate amount of time related to staffing, learning about budget related to staffing, talking about both teaching and non-teaching positions within the school district. And clearly, I have an extensive background related onto the non-teaching side, but now I'm learning the teaching side with Dr. Troyer and Dr. Dominique for preparation for next year. Looking to identify specific opportunities for improvement that we will continue to talk about through the May work session. Operate as a highly effective cross-functional team. And to that end, I'm going to talk about the leadership team tonight because there's some recommended changes that I'm going to publicly announce this evening that actually will result in job postings tomorrow. And then lastly, it's to basically create our culture of accountability in preparation for looking towards the future. So I know this graphic is a little washed out on the screen, but you have it in front of you and the audience does have it with them as well. So I want to kind of take you through, because I said I was going to do this within the first 30 days of ultimately being named superintendent. This is the 2016-17 very high level organizational chart for the school district. We serve the community, the parents, the guardians, and the students. As the Board of Education, you govern and you have 2 direct reports, the superintendent and the treasurer. Becky and I are equals within the school district. Becky does not report to the superintendent, and the superintendent does not report to Becky. We as a team report to the Board of Education. So I know that confuses some people, so I'm saying it very deliberately because many people are surprised by that, but Becky and I have to work together, and it's my responsibility to disagree with Becky as often as she disagrees with me. And we have to agree with each other as well. The first shift, we're just going to kind of start on the left-hand side, and you have to work with me as we go across, is in the center, the coordinators of transportation, food services, and maintenance and operations. I'm going to publicly announce this evening that I'm eliminating my job, so I will not replace myself. I'm actually going to restructure my position to use it differently to benefit the students within the school district. Given the background, knowledge, and experience that I believe I possess, Becky possesses, and Dr. Marilyn Troyer possesses, we believe that we can actually take on the operational structure of the school district without replacing me. So we're going to attempt to do that to the best of our ability. I'm hoping it works, and if not, I reserve the right to come back in the future and tell you that it didn't work, but we're going to at least attempt to make it work to the best of our ability, because I actually believe it benefits kids directly. So I'm going to finish Becky's world. Go ahead.
So is this current state you gave us?
This is now the future. This is 2016-17.
So
so today the coordinators report to me, and that's the position I'm eliminating.
Okay.
Okay. So the chief of operations and strategic development, my current role is not on here, and I will get to Dr. Troyer in just a second.
Okay.
So I want to talk about me and then ultimately Becky, our 2 worlds together, and how this is basically going to work. So currently within my world as chief of operations and strategic development, I have transportation, food services, maintenance and operations, before and after care and enrichment programs, which is also represented on here, but I'm restructuring it differently. In Becky's world, she'll still retain the Director of Financial Services and the Finance Department. So those will be direct reports still to the treasurer. That's her side of the house ultimately, and she maintains all financial authority for that. We will share mutually between us transportation, food services, and maintenance and operations. And we've come up with a plan that we believe will work as we look towards the future. But that's the first step, is I'm eliminating me. Second step. Dr. Troyer. Dr. Troyer is currently the Chief of Innovation, Improvement, and Human Capital. And the only way I can remember it for Marilyn is IIH. That's how I taught myself her title. So she's Chief of Innovation, Improvement, and Human Capital. Dr. Troyer is getting a new title. Dr. Troyer and I truly serve as the assistant superintendents within the school district. I'm going to start by recommending tonight in her contract action that Dr. Troyer actually become the assistant superintendent by title. Marilyn will assume all responsibilities beyond her present scope related to human resources. So the classified day-to-day stuff that I do with non-teaching staff in the school district in my present role will transition to Dr. Troyer. She will become all human resource functions within the school district for day-to-day operations, both teaching and non-teaching. So certified and classified human resource elements will transition to Dr. Troyer. Also in that shift, ultimately, there's other job responsibilities that I have currently that aren't just going to stop and go away. So we're in the process of assessing where those things can best function within the school district, because there's things that still need to exist. And I'm not going to go into great detail about some of those elements, because not everyone knows that they're going to be receiving something, has had an opportunity to see me in the first 8 days. So I will be continuing to meet with people to advise them of an additional responsibility that is yet to come their way. In the new structure for next year, there will be 5 directors. Ultimately, the director of technology currently exists within the school district, and he will continue to assume all functions related to IT, and he's also receiving additional services related to student services, specifically related to PowerSchool, EMIS, student registration, and day-to-day K through 12 attendance. So Mr. Voss is aware of that. So that's not something that I haven't already had a conversation about. So he is aware. Director of Communications is Patrick Galloway. He will continue to serve the school district ultimately, willingly, every single day. And his communications coordinator with Beth Steele. So great team in communications ultimately, and they will continue to be within the school district. Sheila Saunders is the Director of Special Education. That position will still remain within the school district. She's actually a recommendation for you this evening for contract action. She has 2 assistant directors within special ed. One specifically K through 5, the second grade 6 through 12. That structure is the same as it is today. No changes in special education. The change. With the abolishment or elimination of my position, you may recall that Dr. Domini has previously talked about the need to restore a K through 12 curriculum position within the school district. I do not believe, based upon the workload and everything that I know about curriculum assessment and instruction, as we look towards the future and the work that needs to get done related to teaching and learning and the support that's necessary for classroom teachers on a day-to-day basis to ensure integrity and fidelity in the educational program, that it's physically possible to do it with one person. I used to be one, so I get it. I know the workload that we expect within our school district, so this is where I've made a decision. The K through 12 curriculum director position that was being restored to the school district is going to be modified with the elimination of my position. So I'm actually recommending, and we're going to post tomorrow for hire, a director of elementary education and a director of secondary education. So the elimination of my position allows us to add additional supports to teaching and learning within our school district. I've shared this privately with the Association for the Teachers, with PLEA leadership, and had conversations with building leadership, specifically the building administrators. It's been extremely positively received. They think it's actually a wonderful idea to try to actually add greater value to the school district for the work that actually has to occur. The Director of Elementary Education will be responsible for the elementary principals, K1, 2, 5, 2, 8, and the elementary assistant. The Dean of Students is currently remaining at the 2-8 elementary school for the 2-8, and the coordinator before and after school care and enrichment was currently assigned to me. That's the Eagle's Nest, the Impact Program, and the Eagle Summer Day Camp. Because of the curriculum content related to those things, that coordinator will have a direct relationship with the Director of Elementary Education, but she still will technically be also part of the group at the top that works specifically with me and Becky on the operational things and logistical things that occur within the school district within her role. The second position is Director of Secondary Education. That position will have high school and middle school. So again, middle school, high school principals, the middle school and high school assistant principals, and the athletic director, both at the high school level and middle school level, and the dean of students at the middle school. It's my expectation that both directors, although there's one specifically K5 and one specifically 612, still have to have articulation and alignment to have a K through 12 program. So everything will be viewed K through 12 to ensure fidelity within the integrity of the program that exists for curriculum assessment and instruction across the continuum, but then each person respectively will be responsible for K5, 6, 12, and overlap when the transitions happen between the buildings by grade level and for curriculum content. And then we all support, ultimately, going back to, we serve students, parents, and the community. We can't do this without our teachers and our non-teaching staff. So that's the high level 10,000 foot view of what I promised to do immediately within the first 30 days. Ultimately, for staffing purposes, there's huge implications to filling these roles from a leadership perspective. We are actively pursuing the high school assistant principal, the middle school principal, and tonight you accept the resignation for the 2-8 principal from Mrs. Denny. Those positions are moving through the human resource process to find those persons for hire. It is still our goal to present them at your May 23rd Board of Education meeting for hire. And in my perfect world, we will have actively recruited, secured, and retained, if at all possible, the Director of Elementary Education and the Director of Secondary Education. The third pillar is student achievement. By far, this is the most important. This is the purpose. This is why we are here. Students come first. Within the plan, I've tried to create overarching questions that actually challenge our thinking to truly understand what is best for kids. Or on the day-to-day functions, what we're doing, how is it best for kids? Or will this impact what is best for kids? Or how do I as an individual or we as a school district serve to do what is in the best interest of kids? And quite honestly, what could we do differently in order to better serve kids? And lastly, what will I or we stop doing if it's not best for kids? And Paul made a comment earlier that it takes courage to bring something to the forefront to actually have a robust conversation about it. I actually think there's opportunities like that across the school district. We just have to be willing to have a very transparent public conversation and have the respect to agree to disagree, but actually have an understanding as to why that's actually happening. And at the end, make a decision for what we truly believe to be in the best interest of kids, which is my third pillar. Fourth pillar is engagement and communications. Again, this responsibility does not lie just with me as the new superintendent within the school district. I am working actively to understand more about the culture, the history, and the expectations of our school community at large. I've spent an inordinate amount of time in the last week, ironically, a lot of time on Sunday, diving through deeply the HYA survey and the community task force data. And you will see in my plan that I've placed in every area, because part of this responsibility comes to you as a board, I believe we need to have a robust conversation related to the community task force data. It hasn't been a public conversation despite efforts in the past to bring it to the Board of Education for a public discussion. I think that that is a mistake. I believe it needs to become a public conversation to inform our thinking, to help us understand what other people within our school community have done. There was 9 months of work. We don't have to agree with what it says, but we need to understand the work and basically the perspective that it's offering. I don't have a professional opinion yet. I'm about a third of the way through the document, trying to understand some of the thinking and the data that's actually represented. And I look forward to that conversation. Again, it ties to the fact through engagement and communication that voices need to be included and valued, not necessarily agreed upon, but included and valued. And that we have openness and transparency. And part of this charge comes back to the board, that we have to develop an open, honest conversation with me as the superintendent, with you as the governance team for the school district, that then translates into the greater school community at large. The last pillar, and this is our favorite, this is the new Becky and Michael world. So this is Rebecca, as people fondly call us when we show up together sometimes. But ultimately, within operation and finance, we continue to search for and implement efficiencies. We have a responsibility to demonstrate that we're maximizing our existing resources. We must continue to reduce expenditures where possible. And bottom line, we have to live within our existing budget or better. So Mrs. Jenkins and I have been having very interesting conversations so far about other areas of the budget that I haven't been directly involved in the past. So I am learning that world within our school district presently today. And we commit that we're going to demonstrate to you that we can do this. Again, the board, the administration, the teachers, and the staff, we have a joint responsibility to our community, to our students, and to ultimately the parents with whom we serve to demonstrate that we will create the culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. The leadership team heard me last week very clearly from a couple text messages that I've received that they truly understand that is their new reality. They're looking forward to discovering what that all means, and I told them that's a coming attraction. So my first 8 days, what have I done? I've actually accomplished a few things. So part of my report, or part of the plan actually has public reporting, and I'm going to try to create a scorecard of the 95 different activities. But to be honest, I didn't get that done on Sunday. I'll admit it. But these are the things that I've actually achieved within the first 8 days after you named me as the next superintendent within the school district. I'm actually working on stakeholder engagement. I have several conference calls I've already completed. I have several meetings already added to the calendar. We started the transition related to the calendar from Dr. Domini and myself, so we're working through that. But I am scheduling meetings with specific community stakeholders independently, and I've already started that process to reach out to them directly to try to integrate myself into the school community beyond just the school district, but the city, the township, and the business enterprise that exists within our schools. I've gone public with the 100-day plan here tonight, as well as at the leadership team meeting. We've actively worked on staffing meetings. I believe we will have more information to share with you about changes that are likely to occur related to the current staffing information you've heard at the May work session. In the interim of that, we will send you updates, but Dr. Troyer, Dr. Domini, and I are actively working with the building principals. That was incorporated into the 30-day plan, that I would be integral to the conversations to understand the numbers and what it means for 2016-17, and that is happening. I talked about the HYA survey for the 700 plus respondents within the greater school community, as well as the task force data. I've gone to my first Central Ohio Superintendent's meeting. It was kind of fun because the last time I was there, I was interim state superintendent. They didn't really like me. So they don't always like what you have to tell them when you have to share some of the stuff from the department. But it was actually kind of fun to go as the superintendent again, or superintendent-elect. Budget review and planning is well underway with Ms. Jenkins. We're looking at the review and restructure of the leadership roles that I talked about tonight. In addition to that, I will tell you I've revised 5 specific roles at the administrative offices. I announced that to the administrative secretaries on Friday to share with them what their roles are going to look like beginning in August, ultimately based upon the elimination of my position and transition of specific work within the building itself. The position descriptions for the new director of elementary education and the director of secondary education are ready to go. They will be posted tomorrow afternoon after I send an all staff communication. So tomorrow morning, I will first send a staff communication to explain some of the information I'm sharing with you this evening, give them options to be able to have additional information or resources to that. And then tomorrow afternoon, or by tomorrow afternoon, I will publicly post the 2 positions that I've created as part of the organizational structure for the leadership team I'm looking to establish to meet the needs of the kids. I've shared tonight the revised organizational chart. We've started transition calendar planning. Patrick was gracious enough to help me schedule media interviews. The first article, I believe, is in tomorrow's newspaper, if it comes out correctly, but we believe it's tomorrow. Middle school scheduling meeting, we actually participated in those over the course of the last 2 days, Friday and then today. And then board member discussions. I've had the good fortune to speak with a few of you, basically since I've been hired, to talk about specific elements. I'm going to summarize very simplistically to remind you that basically my vision is students first. We will create the culture of accountability that basically meets the developmental needs and academic needs of kids within our school district every single day. Our focus is students first. Do you have any questions or comments for me at this time?
Couldn't you have worked a little bit more in?
I've been busy.
Mr. Sawyers, I have a couple questions on the org chart. So I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. You would have the principals reporting into the directors of elementary and secondary ed?
Correct. And then the directors will report to the assistant superintendent and me.
And so that's a shift for them, right?
Yes. In the current reporting structure, they go straight to the superintendent. I'm actually changing that because I want the developmental outcomes at the specific building level, both K-5 and 6-12, that tie to outcomes that the directors will be directly responsible for. So the day-to-day monitoring will happen through the director of elementary ed and the director of secondary ed because I expect them to be integrated into the work.
And you don't have any concerns that you're too removed from the principals?
Nope, because we will still see them regularly. The directors will be part of cabinet that'll exist within the school district, but we'll have frequent, regular interactions with the building principals, both at their level and at the overarching piece for leadership. So Dr. Troyer and I are in the process of mapping out what that's going to look like for next year. But no, I still believe we'll still be directly involved. There's just a level of responsibility in between that.
And just for everyone who's listening in, can you, I think you did a great job looking at head count and you know, coming up with an innovative way to utilize existing head count. But I just want to make sure everyone understands the value of those two positions that you added, the Director of Elementary Ed and Director of Secondary Ed. I know, you know, I receive a lot of comments from parents feeling like there's a lack of consistency sometimes across the grades in terms of what kids are experiencing in the classroom. And so maybe you want to just share a little about what those two roles will be doing.
Right. I'll be honest and tell you that the job descriptions I'm posting tomorrow are basically short of Mother Teresa. They are. They're 4.5 pages long. I want everything under the sun related to curriculum assessment and instruction to look at ultimately teaching and learning the entire continuum. One of the concerns that you've raised is the lack of cohesion or consistency perhaps within some grade levels. And that's part of the expectation of what ultimately is added to these roles, that they will be working directly with the building principals to ensure the academic integrity of the quality of instruction that's actually taking place, or that we understand specifically what the outcomes within that specific grade level are, to ensure that second grade is second grade. This is what the curriculum is that's required. The art of teaching still belongs to the teacher. The teacher brings that to life every day in the classroom, but they have to understand these are the non-negotiables that have to occur minimally in second grade. Our teachers beyond that exceed that in many ways from a growth standpoint when you specifically look at the data that represents how students are growing, but the art of teaching still rests with the classroom teacher. We do have to have integrity within the pedagogy related to what specifically is being taught from a curriculum standpoint or instructional standpoint, and how we're going to come up with the outcomes that measure that. So it's less about how they get there, but we understand what the destination is. These two directors will be part of the conductors that specifically work with the building principals to make sure that it's clearly understood that this is where we're going. This is the target, this is the outcome, and this is the requirement. How you get there on your journey is your art of teaching, but it's going to be crystal clear what the direction is as far as the target of how we get there.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for the report. I know the amount of work for those who haven't dived into the 100-day plan. It's 26 pages. It is really quite illuminating. I strongly encourage you to dive in and read it for yourself. Michael put an extensive amount of work into it over the past several weeks and is now in the process of implementing. I'd like to comment specifically on the culture associated with a culture of accountability, but it's this culture of reporting out. It's this culture of this sort of dialogue. As we discussed this during the interview process and during the debate over the statement of purpose and everything that we were trying to do, you know, this vision of a cultural change that is comfortable with reporting out on how we're doing and how we're not doing and what we're doing to fix what isn't going well and how we're celebrating what is a challenge. It's not common for a lot of people to be comfortable in that environment saying, I tried, it didn't go so well. But it's really critical to being able to acknowledge that so that we can move forward. So I want to thank you for the work you've done so far in putting this in place, in beginning to bring it to life. The real work is going to be when goals and objectives are established and there are clear direction and measurements in place, and we have to confront the reality. That will be where the real work comes in. I'm confident that it will get done, but I'm thrilled with the start. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled with the emphasis on curriculum and alignment, and I really appreciate the fact that your org chart now clearly reflects the priorities that you have established. So I think that's great. If it turns out that the reassignment of all the Michael Sawyer's duties is not effective or becomes overwhelming, in the FERC meeting, I learned a term I had not heard before, and that was fail fast. So the idea is if you try it and it turns out that it's not working the way that you want it to, our hope is that you recognize it quickly and can correct the course very expeditiously. So, and I know you will. So this is great. This is so helpful to us, and the board's commitment to you is that we will begin working on the specific outcomes, those things that you will be measured by, your performance will be measured by, but also the outputs that will determine our success as a school district. And so that's work that we need to begin very quickly now. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And now we will turn to Ms. Vicki Arco for the PLEA update this evening.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm giving you all a report. I will not be reading all of this because it's 3 pages long.
Oh.
So I've chosen to highlight a few pieces for you. Follow along your.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you to the Board of Education for once again welcoming PLEA to share some updates of all the great work and fun learning that is happening amongst my coworkers and in the classroom. I'm going to highlight some of the work that's being done throughout the middle school staff, specifically this evening. I'll start with the first bullet point. Mandy McNamara just finished a course titled Teach Like a Champion Through Learner's Edge. The research-based strategies focus on the use of increasing rigor in questioning, writing, and routines to enhance student engagement. The 7th grade team she is on plans to use a variety of the strategies as a team in the coming year to promote more consistency amongst the core academic classrooms. She is the 3rd team member to take the course. The 7th grade teacher strongly encouraged this course for future PD amongst our staff. I'd also like to highlight Erin Farley's work. She is an 8th grade social studies teacher, and her students are currently involved with a pen pal exchange, which is online, with students in South Africa through the site penpaleducation.com. They are spending the next 6 weeks focused on the study of civic leaders and social activists around the world who advocated for equality. Each week, pen pal pairs will read a news article related to a topic like discrimination or diversity or key figures, and they will answer some questions about it and discuss their thoughts with their South African pen pal. Both Erin and her students are excited to broaden their global perspective with peers on another continent. And last but certainly not least, we'll go back to 8th grade. At the start of the final quarter of the year, there were 3 teachers, Susie Cooper, Molly Hamilton, and Carrie Fuller. And they asked their 8th grade English students a very important question. Are you ready to write a research essay? And of course, the students gave them mixed reviews. They then gave students a little time to let that announcement sink in and settle. And later they added, did you know you can research anything that is important to you? At that point, they really confused the students. They then explained to their students that they had worked hard in order to receive this autonomy on writing an essay with a topic of their own choosing. They also told them that they had to research their topic, write a multi-page essay, and create a presentation to inform their peers about what is important to them. Currently, their 8th grade students are excited to embark on this tradition, and they have taken off without hesitation. Students are researching with passion, curiosity, determination, and excitement. Some students have chosen to research about a possible future career, whereas others are trying to find information on how service learning impacts teens due to a recent trip to Nicaragua. They also have students finding out if segregation has truly dissolved, as well as understanding what drives the American mindset. As Neil Armstrong once stated, their research is creating new knowledge.
Susie Cooper, Molly Hamilton, and Carrie Fuller will learn just as much from the students as the students have learned from them this year. And they look forward to reading their essays and being wowed by their presentations. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the reading. And once again, we're just excited to be engaging in professional dialogue, learning, and bringing that learning back to our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And is there a member of OPSI? No, there's no OPSI update this evening.
Okay, that brings us to board liaison reports. Are there any this evening? Did you want to report on the FERC meeting?
Sure. We had our regularly scheduled Financial Review and Reporting Committee meeting on Monday of last week. And it was the overarching topic of that meeting was really what its purpose and what the board expects from the committee. And that topic came up by the two members who were present. We're short a couple of members who had to resign for personal reasons, and then a couple other members had work conflicts that took them away from the meeting. As a result, we didn't have a quorum, and so the two gentlemen who were there were really pretty pointed in asking that we make sure that we have clear purpose and expectations for the Financial Review and Reporting Committee, that we clarify those expectations for them, and that we then act on what we've asked them to do. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable request / demand, and we'll fulfill that and make sure they have clear direction, and we'll fill the vacant seats and work to make it a valuable part of the process. I served on the committee for 5 years. It was as much for me about learning about exactly how school finance works and offering my perspective. And I expect to get the same thing from the members who are on the committee now that I'm on the board. Even with the two members present, as Laura pointed out, I'd heard the term fail fast, but it's one of those things that you hear in a committee of that sort that can move from the business community into a school community as a conceptual idea of how we can get better at what we're doing. You don't have to necessarily use the same terminology, but it's a concept that is worth considering, and the insights of community members into matters of finance can inform more than just finance. So I look forward to the time we spend with the FRC and learning more and getting their input and making it of value to them and us. Did I miss anything?
I don't believe you did. Thank you very much. Yeah, it actually was a very informal, I would say, meeting, but very informative. So, and you touched on the fact that we do still have a couple of spots to fill on the FRRC. The application deadline came and went. We have 6 individuals who've expressed interest at this point, we have 2 slots open. We also had 1 individual who came forward to volunteer to serve on the JPD. And we need to determine next steps. I think that it's certainly with the individual for JPD, I would like to move that one along so that we can honor their request to have a new trustee named by the school board in time for their meeting, which is in mid-May. So I do want to get that particular interview scheduled. And also we need to find some dates where the board can come together to interview the applicants for the Financial Review and Reporting Committee. So I will send you out a calendar with dates, and the quicker you can get back to me, I've heard from a couple of you, but there are a few stragglers. So the faster you can get back to me, the faster we can get these interviews scheduled. They're always interesting because generally speaking, we've done this several times in the past, and the individuals are wonderful people to volunteer to give their time, and They come from very different backgrounds and walks of life, and I have not had the opportunity to talk to anyone who didn't have something significant to contribute to the school district. So it's a great learning opportunity for us as well. Okay, and that brings us to the 5-year forecast.
So as you heard tonight, there continue to be changes, especially at the middle school level with staffing. So my goal is to have a draft forecast out to the board by Monday, no matter what, with the latest, greatest information. So I am currently trying to work on those staffing updates in the forecast to determine how many of the 13 that are in play are actually going forward, or do they remain a placeholder. The other piece of information, as I reported to FERC last week, we collected $900,000 more in real estate tax collections in the current year, and that I was expecting an offsetting income tax reduction based on the Discover abatement expiring, but had not seen that. So I scheduled a meeting with Chad Fuller with the city and have found that April of 2016 will now be the last time that we receive income tax sharing from that abatement. So I expect that not all in the current year, but certainly within this year and then the next fiscal year to have that offsetting income tax sharing reduction in place. So I'm working that into the forecast as well. What I want to make sure that I have from the board is anything that you as a board would like to see implemented into the 5-year forecast. From the discussions that I have heard over the last couple of meetings, I don't hear the board saying add anything back for pay to participate, and I do not hear the board saying to add anything back for transportation. So I just want to make sure that that's where the board is, and I'm not leaving something out that I should be including.
Would anybody like to give Becky a different opinion about what she's heard?
I would only clarify that I think that we discussed that we could do this at any time, right? This is for forecast purposes, and if the board should change its mind on either of those matters in coming months, you would do it at that time.
Yes.
And the FRC had similar input. Identical input.
Right.
They did. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I have heard there are some members of the community who are very much interested in reducing pay to participate. I definitely have heard that from several people. Not a lot, but several people. And I've heard nothing from anyone about the transportation issue. It would appear, just based on the lack of questions that I've received about it lately, that people seem to have settled into a routine that maybe they don't love, but they have come to work through. So I think that what you're hearing is accurate, and I would advise you to proceed based on your understanding of the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to Mr. Darrow's request for an additional agenda item. Mr. Darrow.
Thank you, President Kohler. So a little background. What I'm asking the board to consider is the formation of a board committee. So this would be a committee that reports to the board. It's an advisory committee, and the committee would have the purpose of develop and present to the Board of Education an alternate health insurance plan or plans with the intent to provide district staff with reasonable security for healthcare expenses while saving the district meaningful premium expense. So again, I'd like to emphasize that it's an advisory board, and that I know the rest of the members of the board are very much supportive of providing the needed security for all of our staff members. We know that health insurance security is an important item and want to make sure that that remains. And So that's the purpose of the committee. It was an item that has been discussed for the entirety of my 5 years on the FRC and was a very substantial topic of conversation with the community task force. And I think it behooves the district, the board in particular, the board only, to move forward with really identifying what's possible. And so that's the purpose of this committee. I've spoken with various members of the board periodically about the topic, and I think it's time to bring this forward to actually form a committee. I know Vice President McClellan has expressed strong interest in joining me to chair this committee, and I would welcome working with John on that. To that point, I propose the committee membership include 2 board members, not fewer than 3 nor more than 5 community members, and either the district superintendent or treasurer. So a relatively small committee so that it can work quickly. And to that end, propose that the timeline be 3 months unless more time is requested by the committee and approved by the board.
Are there questions? I have a few. What specifically would be the work of this group then?
So the work would be I would envision working with people who have experience greater than my own, and I have a fair amount of experience in health insurance, but people who have even more experience than I do in researching and developing an alternate plan, something that is different than what we currently offer, that provides the needed security and saves money. So the work is really to develop an alternate, come up with something different.
And so how would this work be different than the work that's done in the PLEA, OPSI contract prescribed insurance committee that has been working for years?
And that's a great question. And the insurance committee that is prescribed in the contract, that's actually one of the challenges, is that the work of that committee is prescribed in the contract. And so there are limits on, to some degree, on what it is they're able to do and work within the current contractual limits. And that's important. And I value the work that committee has done and look forward to working with them. But this committee would work in parallel, but in a different direction, to actually look at things from a completely different perspective and present that different perspective to the board so that we can talk about what's possible and get that out in public.
And can you give me any help understanding what you mean by an entirely different perspective?
I can imagine a variety of different perspectives just based on my own experience, but I'd rather not predispose or predetermine what those are. There are different ways of approaching health insurance that reduce costs for everyone. One thing I don't envision is cost shifting, where the entire purpose is just to put more burden on somebody else. A well-designed health insurance plan that is different actually changes the decision-making process of participants in ways that facilitate everybody spending less money while getting the same or better health outcomes. So it's that different mindset that looks at the use of healthcare services in a way that says it isn't free, and that the participants should think about whether something is sensible for a variety of reasons, not just because somebody says it's a good idea. There's a whole lot of research out there on use of healthcare services that shows that when people are more engaged in the process, they make better decisions, and oftentimes those decisions not only save money, but improve health outcomes. So that's the kind of dynamic that I'm looking to see from this committee.
No one else has any questions? I've got more. In the purpose of the committee here, I know that you have a qualifier before the word security. And you're talking about an intent to provide district staff with reasonable security for healthcare expenses. Would you be open to removing the qualifier in your purpose of the committee?
So the qualifier is there. I'll just talk it out. The qualifier is there because there is no absolute. Absolute security it's free. There isn't absolute security today. The board and the associations negotiate over time to decide what's reasonable on the basis of how that goes. And so I think reasonable is somewhat understood. So, if I take it out, I want to make sure that we're not, I'm not proposing to have this committee propose something that provides absolute security, because that just doesn't exist.
Well, the word comparable security, would that be acceptable?
Again, I don't know, because that prescribes the exact same dollars, and I don't know that that's reasonable, because if the dollars go down for everybody, if spending is decreased, then I'm not sure how we get to what you're asking for without really minimizing the opportunity to really consider something different.
So you're talking about reasonable security for healthcare expenses. You're not talking about reasonable security for healthcare access or healthcare. I guess the reasonable is modifying the word expenses. Is that correct? Not the security of that a particular plan might give to members who are enrolled in it.
In the sentence, it's before security. So it's, again, I think what we currently offer is an attempt to provide reasonable security for healthcare expenses. Insurance of any sort is a hedge against risk. I mean, that's really what its purpose is. And people make decisions every day as to what sort of insurance they're willing to pay for to hedge any particular risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the word reasonable is there because, again, it's a discussion, and the purpose of this committee is to present to the board options for things that are different. The board ultimately has the decision as to what we consider reasonable and how we want to use that information. So I think the decision still rests with the board on how we use the information, but I think the charge to the committee should be somewhat open-ended so that there is flexibility for this committee to look at things differently. And if I don't want to tighten it up too much, because then I'm not so sure we're going to get anything new. And we need something that it looks different.
Okay, I will agree to disagree on the word reasonable, because that's fine. In terms of the 5 community members, when we have had board committees in the past, we've used an application process. Would you be open to doing that?
I'd be open to doing that. I'd like to, I do have in mind some folks that I know have some expertise, and I would certainly propose those to the board for the board to consider. And if there are others who are interested, then I think we should be open to them as well.
Phil, what do you mean by expertise? So what is their background?
They have experience in looking at health insurance plans and evaluating plans and seeing what is available in the marketplace. And again, this is a more holistic look, looking across the marketplace, not just at what exists in school districts, but everywhere, so that we do get a more holistic look at what's possible.
Okay, I don't really have a problem with the board authorizing this committee with a couple of cautions. One is that I think it's an excellent idea to inform ourselves about what might be out there. But I think we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we can't do anything alone. So what I would like to see happen is while this work is going on, I know you have been invited to represent the board on the standing insurance committee. And I think it's absolutely vitally important that you be willing to serve in that capacity as well. We've had, I've had a couple of conversations and have been assured by PLEA leadership that they, like us, are open to conversations and open to research and open to working together. So I would really like to see that
I'd
happen.
relish the opportunity. I've worked with Joe for a number of years on the FRC, and I think we have a good working relationship. And Joe's a smart guy, and so I look forward to learning from what they're doing and helping that inform this other committee as well. So I think it should be a two-way street, and I think that's great.
Okay.
I agree with Laura. I think you are gonna have to be the glue between the existing committee and the new committee. So clear your calendar.
So what else is new?
Are you okay with that?
Yeah. As long as it's not super glue, just like.
So would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the board approve the formation of a committee to study and make recommendations or make a presentation to the board on optional or alternate health insurance plan. And I'd like to chair that committee and would like to work with John on.
Did you get that motion?
I'm sure you'll put it in board language.
I will.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Just the fact that the community members who will be involved, you will bring those back to the board for approval? Okay, there are no other questions. Could we have a roll call on that, please?
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion passes, and it is our opportunity for public participation. Do we have anyone who has managed to stick it out this long? No? Okay. Moving right along into our consent agenda items, I'd like to take them in two sections, if I may. The first motion I'm seeking is for treasurer's items for action, and those would be items A1 and 2.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jenkins?
I sent out some background information on these, so unless you have questions, I have nothing further to add.
Are there any questions?
May I ask you a question?
You certainly can.
Thank you. And I know you've talked with us about this before, but on the last page on new construction, that is that for the 2.8? That's for the 2.8 building, correct?
That's the residual from the 2.8,
Right.
yes.
So am I looking at this right? We have 658 in the black.
That is correct.
And what is that? What are those funds being used for right now? Or will they be used for?
We have a couple of purchase orders that are still outstanding that are just follow-up. Anything that we discover in the building that hasn't been taken care of yet would be used from those funds, but ultimately there's really not much coming out of those funds. So they'll sit there until the district has some other need for them, which could potentially be repaired to the middle school boiler that we have coming.
Okay, so those funds could be used for
Yes.
that type of,
Yeah, the ballot language was open enough that you can use it for other options. We're trying not to use those funds for anything else. But yes, they could be used for items like the middle school boiler repair that needs to happen.
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote? I think so.
Vice President McClellan,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
President Kohler.
Yes, that motion carries. And the second section of the consent agenda this evening are the superintendent's items for action. And they run from B1A through C3. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Darrow. Is there a second?
Just to, are we, I just want to make a comment or question on C3
See.
related to the
Oh, yeah, let's get
performance
the,
pay
let's
targets.
get a second and then you can, we can discuss it.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So does that mean you're second? Okay. Good. All
Debbie and I
right.
are working together then.
Let's first hear from Dr. Dominy and then we'll entertain questions.
Very good. Thank you. The items that I'm bringing for you this evening, you've had several weeks to review the contracts for administrative staff, and we provided that information in advance. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that I know that we are all very disappointed that you are receiving the resignation of Principal Denny this evening, but we all wish her well with her decision to focus on family and in this next chapter of her life. But there will be much opportunity to recognize all of her extraordinary work over the last 4 years in the coming weeks. And we will definitely do that. So I won't put her on the spot this evening, but because I didn't tell her in advance to be prepared to speak, but that day is coming. So be prepared. And then as Mr. Newmoff pointed out, there are several, in addition to several general action items, you are taking action this evening on the performance pay targets that were discussed earlier in the work session. And also you heard, as you remember, you heard a report from the board members, Paul and Laura, who serve on that alternative compensation committee. One other note about that, again, just to review, the strange nature of the timing this year was due to the Ohio report card data upon which the targets were set not being released until February of this year. So you should be able to easily get on a more normal cycle of beginning of the school year, setting targets starting next year when the state delivers the data in summer.
No, thank you. I think you clarified my question or concern to make it clear that for next year, we'll be able to have timely setting of those goals.
Okay. Are there any other questions about this portion of our agenda this evening?
Just a comment about the administrative contracts. I just want to make sure it's clear that the 2-year term that we have discussed is not a reflection in any way, shape, or form on our confidence in individual administrators. Rather, it is an effort on our part to move toward shorter terms for review purposes. At the same time, we look forward to lengthy terms of successful employment here. One of the greatest things that can happen is you have great teachers, great staff, great administrators who are great at what they do and produce great results for kids and who want to be a part of our district for a long time. I know I certainly want those outcomes. At the same time, I think it's critical from an accountability point of view that everyone be continuously accountable for the outcomes. And so the 2-year term is a general policy, a general concept that we've looked to across the board, including our new superintendent, who we have terrific confidence in, and yet this is how we think it ought to be done. So again, it's not a reflection on anything other than our desire to have continuous accountability and encourage long-term employment at the same time.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newhoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries. We have one more opportunity for public participation, and we have none. So all we need now is a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Well, that was quick. Where were you guys the rest of the night? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newhoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Vice President McClellan?
Yep.
President Kohler?
Yes, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.